Welcome to the informational webinar for the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant National Evaluation, so CLSD for short. And my name is Ellie Fulbeck. I'm from American Institutes for Research, and we're going to be talking specifically about the impact study component of the national evaluation today, which is focused on elementary schools, and in particular on grades 3, 4, and 5 in elementary school. So we'll be sharing some information about that. And hi, Jonathan. We see your note in the chat. No worries about not being able to rename yourself. Thank you for sharing information. So just to let everyone know, this will be recorded. We'll make the recording available for folks that may be joining late or may be unable to join today. Okay, so we're going to start off by explaining a little bit about how the CLSD impact study will work, and explain and then we'll explain the requests for participants, the benefits for participating, and the eligibility requirements. So starting off with how it will work, there are kind of 4 steps that we've broken this out into. So the first is that the state grantees, of which California Department of Education is one, will invite county offices of education, or COEs, serving as the literacy lead agencies, or LLAs, and their district partners to apply for subgrants. And we were just chatting at the beginning of this, there's already several subgrant applications in progress. So that this first step is happening. And so the subgrantees will implement the CLSD activities if they're selected to win an award in the 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24 school year. And the only request that we have for this study in this first step is simply that the states, let county offices of education and literacy lead agencies know that this is an opportunity. And that's what we're doing right now. In the second step, the LLAs are going to apply for subgrant based on the criteria that CDE sets forth, and include district partners in the subgrant. So districts for the impact study that have at least 4 elementary schools are going to be best suited to participate, although districts with at least 2 elementary schools would be eligible. So any district that has at least 2 elementary schools that they plan to include in the CLSD subgrant would be eligible for this impact study opportunity. LLAs, during their, at the time that they apply for a subgrant, will indicate which districts meet this criteria and would be interested in participating should they win an award. So there'll be a little section in your application where you can check a box and list the districts that are eligible and interested and the number of elementary schools that they have. All right, in the third step of the impact study, CDE is going to review applications that they receive. And so they will determine 7 subgrants that will go to LLAs. And of those 7, we hope some will have indicated that they have districts with 2 or more elementary schools that are interested in participating in the impact study. And our team will follow up with those LLAs and their district partners to see if they're still interested and to finalize their participation. And then in the fourth step, for the districts that were in, that are partnered with LLAs that won a subgrant and that remain interested in participating, our study team will work with the district to randomly assign their elementary schools to be either in what we call a first funding group or a second funding group. The first funding group schools would begin implementing CLSD funded activities and resources right away in the 21-22 school year and in the 22-23 school year. And then the second funding group would begin implementing in the summer of 2023. So it's a phased implementation design consistent with a lot of districts' continuous improvement approaches. And so I'll animate the screen here, you'll see the little greenhouses will float to the first funding group. So those represent, if this were a district with 4 elementary schools, they would be randomly selected to the first one. The blue houses would be randomly selected to go in the second group. Okay, so then we'll turn now to the requests for districts that are interested in participating and what the eligibility requirements and benefits are. So our request of districts is twofold. First, that they abide by the lottery results, and second, that they complete surveys that we will administer in spring of 22 and spring of 23. So here's a timeline that represents the subgrant years. In the 2021 school year, after we know which of the 7 LLAs have received subgrants and which districts within those are eligible and interested in participating, we would conduct the lottery, which is represented by the little coin flip there, to determine which elementary schools would be in the first funding group and which would be in the second funding group. So again, here you're seeing the first funding group as the green schools, the second funding group as the blue schools. And they would begin implementing with the subgrant funds that are represented by those money bags, either in the first 2 years of the subgrant period or in the third year. We would also do the surveys. They are online surveys of school leaders. Typically, that's the principal. Sometimes in larger schools, the principals may designate a literacy lead or a literacy coach to complete the survey. It's an online survey that principals would complete in spring of 22 and spring of 23. It takes about 20 minutes, and we have gift cards available for participants. We would also survey grades 3, 4, and 5 ELA or literacy teachers in the spring of 23. So just one time. And again, 20-minute survey. We have gift cards to compensate respondents for their time. And so really, those are the only 2 requests of participating districts. There are multiple benefits for subgrantees and for districts to participate. So the first is that you can learn about effective strategies, practices, programs, activities from the schools that implement early. As I mentioned before, this is similar to many districts' continuous improvement or piloting approaches, where you're trying something out and seeing how it goes, and then making modifications or adjustments before you implement it sort of writ large. So that's the first benefit that we see. The second benefit is that the AIR study team, our team, will provide districts with additional compensation above and beyond the subgrant funding that they receive from their LLA. So for each participating school, the district would receive an additional $15,000, regardless of what funding group the school participates in. So a district with 4 schools would receive $60,000 above and beyond. There's minimal disruption. So in all cases, LLAs will retain full control over which district partners, of course, they partner with and which schools receive the CLSD funds. It's just that the timing will be staggered for the elementary schools. Eligibility, as I've shared before, is really just specific to size, but I'll walk through the requirements here, most of which are the requirements to participate in the CLSD subgrant anyway. So first, a district would need to be partnered with a county office of education that meets the state determined criteria for a subgrant. Second, excuse me. Second, the applicant needs to indicate their willingness to participate in the impact study on their subgrant application so that we know that the district might be interested. Third, district partners that are interested need to have at least 2 elementary schools that they plan to include in the CLSD subgrant. Again, those with 4 or more elementary schools will be best suited to participate, but any district with at least 2 would be eligible. The fourth criteria for eligibility is that the County Office of Education would need to be awarded the CLSD subgrant to win that. And then, so in the box here, you can see really the only eligibility criteria that the impact study sort of applies above and beyond the criteria for the subgrant is, or for the subaward, is just that the districts be of a certain size, 2 or more elementary schools, and that somehow the applicants let us know that they're interested. Okay, so compensation. As I mentioned before, districts will receive $15,000 per elementary school that they include in the impact study. Again, for districts that have at least 4 elementary schools, this might be $60,000 or more. And districts have a lot of discretion over how they use these funds. We ask that districts not use the funds to support literacy activities in the participating elementary schools during the first 2 years of the grant, but otherwise they can use the funds for anything. So we've had districts use the funds to support capital improvement projects in terms of a new gymnasium. We have a district doing that. We've had districts use the funds to bring in math coaches in the schools. We've had districts support their middle schools with these funds. So it's not specific to elementary or to literacy. There's a lot of discretion. Okay, so next steps. First, the county offices of education and the districts need to determine their partnerships. This is probably something that you all are engaged in these conversations, right now anyway, but that's obviously the first steps, is that the COE should reach out to their district partners and determine which districts are going to participate in the CLSD subgrant should they win the award. For each district partner, the county offices of education need to determine the number of elementary schools that they would include in the subgrant should they be awarded. And when the county offices of education complete their application for a CLSD subgrant, they need to indicate on their application which districts that have at least 2 or more elementary schools might be interested in the impact study should they win the award. So those are the immediate next steps. More generally, it would be good to just let us know if you have questions. We're going to turn here in a moment to open it up for some question and answers. I know people have been joining as I've been presenting, so we can revisit some of the information if needed. We can address questions about your specific context that you might have. And then we also have on the URL links there, a study page with frequently asked questions and lots of additional resources that people can take a look at. And we'll be sure to share this recording and transcript with you all so that you can circulate it with others that may not have been able to join. So with that, I think we can open it up to questions that folks might have. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question, or to type it in the chat, and we're happy to read those out. And as people are sort of formulating questions or thinking about it, I should, Erica and Jennifer, if you guys have, or Aileen, if you guys have anything that you wanted to add or clarify, now could be a good time to do that as well.
Please drop that link in the chat from the previous slide.
Yes, happy to do that.
And then as you're doing that, Jonathan had a question. Ellie, are there a limited number of literacy lead agencies that will be accepted into the impact study? So, and I can just say that there will be 3 literacy lead agencies named for the elementary priorities. And so that would be the limit.
And I will just add that for the impact study, there is no upper bound. I mean, I guess at some point, maybe we would say, like, I don't know, 60 schools or something seems like enough from California, because this is, again, a national study and there are 11 grantees in the cohort that California is in. So 11 additional ones. So we would want to make sure, obviously, that we have enough room to have schools from other states participate as well. But in general, I think people shouldn't worry about like an upper limit necessarily.
So there's a question from David. Ellie, would you want every school in a district or just a sample of them?
So I think that would depend. Great question. I think that would depend on how many schools there were in the district. So if it was a very large district, we've had some very large districts participate in this study. We've asked them to sort of, again, limit the number of elementary schools, I don't know, 16, 18 schools, maybe something like that. Again, so we don't kind of have a study that's really representative of an individual district as opposed to the state sort of more broadly. But I think that's something we're happy to kind of talk through, and certainly the districts, I should have said we have done this study with an earlier cohort as well. So that's why I'm making references to some of these other districts that are already participating. Those districts that I'm thinking of that are quite large have, in some cases, included more elementary schools in their subgrant than they include in the impact study. So having a subset that you want to participate in the impact study is totally fine from our perspective. There's no need to include them all. If it's a smaller district and you want to include them all, that's also good. So pretty flexible in terms of what makes sense for the district and how you're thinking about participating in the subgrant.
And then Jonathan had a question, does a willingness to participate in the impact study impact how their overall application will be evaluated? No, it's truly just indicating your organization's willingness to participate.
That's right. And I know, having talked with Erica, Jennifer, and Aileen and others at CDE for a while now, I know the state is very interested in having some districts participate in this study, but it's not going to translate into priority points or, or any sort of anything related to the way that the awards are made.
I have a question about implementation and time. So in what it said is you want a time split series. And so some would start at the beginning and some would start at a later point in time. Do we need to be careful if we're offering district-wide trainings to not allow the certain schools to participate at the beginning so that they aren't receiving any dosage, or is that not an issue? It's really the school site implementation that you're concerned about?
Well, it's an excellent question, and it's one that's come up before. The way we've sort of split the difference is to say that if there are district-wide like planning sessions or, bringing all the principals together to talk about how things are going, that the schools that are in the second group could still, those principals could still attend, or they could still, like participate in, for example, if there was a district literacy plan that people were pulling together or something, that would be fine. If it's like a professional development on the science of reading for grade 3, 4, and 5 teachers, we would ask that the grade 3, 4, and 5 teachers in the second group not attend until the summer of 23. And there have been a few districts where it's come up where they've said, okay, we understand that, we understand why you're phasing in the implementation and we can see some benefits for that, but that adds an additional cost to us because now we have to offer the training once in summer of 21 and then we have to offer it again in summer of 23. And so we've talked to the U.S. Department of Education that has commissioned us to conduct this study about that and have worked out with them that we've been authorized to cover the costs of holding reimburse the district if they need to do an additional training as a result of participating in the impact study in that example. So there's some, there's some flexibility there. And I think what we found is that following these sort of general webinars, it's good to connect with interested districts and interested county offices of education and talk through some of these particulars because of course CLSD isn't one thing and each approach that districts and county offices of education take might vary a little bit. And so we can talk through kind of the particulars of the context and what you all are thinking about using your subgrant funds for, and figure out something that would, be reasonable and not place additional burden, financial burden on participants. I'm just checking the chat. So it sounds like LLAs need to be prepared to support LEAs for 5 years instead of 3. Erica, you should correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is just for 3 years still.
Yes, that's correct.
And in terms of Jorge, yes, we will share a slide deck and a recording. I apologize about the GoToMeeting was the original invite, and then a Zoom was sent out subsequently. So but we're happy to share that. Are there other questions that are sort of top of mind as people think about how this might work? I know in our earlier conversations between AIR and CDE, we talked about the fact that, as districts are emerging from the pandemic and kind of getting back into the swing of whatever our new normal is, that this phased implementation might be kind of a nice benefit. So again, instead of rolling everything out in the midst of everything else that we're all dealing with right now, we could kind of phase in implementation, at least in the elementary schools, in this way, and sort of be really kind of planful about how we're learning from the early implementers before rolling it out to a larger group. So we hope that appeals. Again, the financial resources, I know with ARP funds, districts probably are not going to be short on lots of financial resources, although these ones I do think are nice in terms of not having many constraints, in terms of how you can use them. Use them in ways that make sense. Jorge, your question, yes. So this particular component of the national evaluation that we're discussing today is specific to the impact study, which is more of a quantitative component. We are also conducting an implementation study, which will include surveys that all county offices of education, all LLAs that receive subgrants and their district partners get. And we'll be doing some interviews with folks at CDE and reviewing documents. So there'll be a qualitative implementation component to the national evaluation. This particular component for the impact study is focused on a quantitative analysis of achievement data. To your question about disaggregating results, to the extent that those data are available from the data that we obtain, yes, we will be disaggregating it.
With the implementation section of it, can you speak about how that will interface with the reporting requirements and the local evaluation plan that's expected as part of the grant? I know that that's not all of what you're talking about today, but I want to see how the components interface with each other.
Yeah, it's a good question. We are happy to coordinate with the local evaluators. I don't know if it's WestEd in this case or others, but we're happy to coordinate. And if there are, kind of requests for multiple surveys, we're happy to share data so that we can minimize burden, or to stagger it so we're not, surveying folks at the same time. So we know there is a local evaluation requirement as well. And so we're happy to coordinate that with folks.
Thanks.
And Jorge, because this is a national evaluation, the primary outcome of interest is in ELA and English literacy. Again, we will be doing some analyses specific to each state that received a CLSD subgrant. So if we're able to obtain data on Spanish literacy from California, as well as from any of the other states that collect those data and are able to share them, we can look at that, but it would not be a part of the national main outcome that we report on. Yes, it is.
Will you be using any, or plan to use any assessments in kindergarten or pre-K through up to third grade, or will you only be using the CAS statewide test?
So for the impact study, it's part of the national evaluation. We're just looking at grade 3, 4, and 5. So all of the assessments that happen kindergarten or even pre-K through 2, as well as those that happen 6 through 12 or 10 at least, are not a part of this study. These are good questions. I guess I have a question for folks who are on, especially those of you that are representing county offices of education. Have you all started to have conversations with your district partners, and do you have a sense for which districts might be interested? And are you moving forward with those? Yeah, I see nods. Cool. Yes, I see your note in the chat, Jorge, and it's certainly, I mean, that is a limitation of a national evaluation. And there is, yep, attached to the invite that I think, Erica, maybe you were able to forward, there is a flyer that explains the national evaluation that could be shared with districts. Also in the link there, you'll see that information.
I'll try to drop that in the chat.
All right, I think I am using good wait time, but let me see. Are there other questions percolating that people, we have some time, so now's a good time to ask them up. And again, we'll follow up with folks. We'll share recording, slides, transcripts from this that you can share with others in your agencies that may not have been able to attend, or with district partners as they're thinking about this. And we can follow up, and I'm happy to find some time to talk through things. I know as you guys are working on your applications, this may seem a little premature to have this conversation as you're still figuring out what it is that you would do with the funds and who you would partner with and all of that. We found, having done this already once last year, that sharing the information early is useful, just so people kind of have it in mind. This is an additional opportunity that's available for districts with at least 2 elementary schools. Just good to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Obviously, we wouldn't move forward with this until awards are made and we would confirm that districts are in fact still interested, and go from there. So there's no great urgency, but we just wanted to make sure that we got this on people's radars and they were thinking about it, and we had plenty of time for questions and just kind of talk it through. And we're happy to explore different ways that this could work. Again, there's a lot of flexibility on our end about how to do this, and we're happy to kind of talk through the particulars of individual contexts if that's useful. I don't believe Beverly Farr is still at AIR, but now you've got me intrigued and I'm gonna do some sleuthing. And yes, I see Aileen's clarified that the multilingual focus is a priority for CDE. Again, there's some limitations when you move to the national scale. Okay, any other final thoughts from CDE friends? Erica, Jen, Aileen?
No,
okay.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody for joining. Sorry again about the GoToMeeting to Zoom switch. I'm glad you found us. And again, we'll share this information and can be circulated to others that may not have made it. I hope everyone has a good short week, and that your inboxes are cooperative and you're able to dig out of the holiday weekends. And we'll follow up soon. All right, thanks everybody.